everyone, welcome back, and this is lesson 6 of our violin and viola journey, and it is progress review time. So what I would like to do to start off with is just to recap some of the really fundamental things that we have learned since lesson 1. So starting off with the different positions that we looked at with just our instruments. So if you could just grab your violin or viola, and this is just a reminder of what those different positions look like. So position 1 is of course rest position, and that is where you're holding your violin or viola in your left hand on the left shoulder of the instrument and resting it on your left leg. That is position 1. Position 2 is where I should be able to see you wearing your instrument as a hat, sliding it down the side of your face until it lands on your left shoulder, and then moving your chin over so that it is looking down towards the scroll of the instrument. And position 3 is where you get the L here, place the thumb on the fingerboard and your first finger there. Now position 3 is playing position, so we only have to do this part when we're playing pizzicato. If we are using our bow, if we're playing arco, then obviously we have to think about the different things we have learned about holding the bow. So at this stage, if you put your instrument back into rest position, and I'd like you to pick up your bow, and I'd like you to show me your very best bow hold. So following that, the advice that I gave you about pretending that your hand is a bunny rabbit with floppy ears, making sure that everything is nice and rounded and relaxed, making sure that your little finger is balancing on the top there, not round the end, making sure it's just all nice and relaxed and rounded, especially your thumb, so that you can create a hole there so that nothing is collapsed and tense, everything is rounded and relaxed. So can you just sit in position 1, but this time with your bow in your right hand? Now while you're in rest position, the really wonderful thing about position 1 is that you can actually just be quietly practicing your bow hold while you're holding your bow on your right leg, because your hand is in a position where it can actually just practice the correct bow hold. So position 1, then go to position 2, where it is a bunny hat, slide it down the side of your head, move your chin to the side, and then position 3 with your bow is placing your bow on the string halfway between the bridge and the fingerboard in a straight line with that beautiful bow hold, showing off that hole created by your rounded thumb. Now the third category on the assessment grid that I showed you last lesson is on things to do with your posture. So all of those different positions, and particularly your bow hold, are things that are really important to try and get right. It doesn't matter if they're not there just yet, but it's one of the things that we'll be looking at in your progress reviews. Very good. Before we get started, I just want to go back to the sound, which is another thing that we'll be looking at. So how can you make the most beautiful sound? We've done a lot of work on the extremes, practicing a really scrunchy sound, and then practicing a really like whispery sound, and then trying to find that sound in between. I'm going to trust that you know how to find that beautiful sound in between now, and I just want us to do a quick warm-up where I'm going to play a few rhythms, a few patterns, you're going to play them back. Now, as I've done in the past, I'll tell you what string I'm starting on, but as and when I move strings, it's up to you to try and figure out what strings I'm playing. I bet you can do it. It's all to do with how well you can listen, and if you can recognise that I'm going to a higher string, then you move on to the next string. We've only got 4 notes to choose from, so it shouldn't be too tricky. Okay, so in playing position, I'm going to start off on the A string. So bow in position on the A string, then listen carefully. I'll count myself in, and then it's your turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you, me, you, me, you, me, you, me, you, me, you, me, retake, you, me, retake, you, me, retake, you, me, you. Fantastic, well done. Into rest position, please. Excellent. So what I'd like to do is I asked you to choose last lesson which piece you would like to use for your progress review, either sailing home or on top of old Smokey. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate what those might sound like for different types of outcomes for the progress review. So I'm going to start off with sailing home. I'm going to perform for you, and I would like you to mark me. Don't be too harsh, but try and follow the grid. So you're looking at accuracy. Am I playing the correct notes? If I am playing every single note correctly, then I would get a 3 for accuracy. If I'm sort of scuffing some of them, or if I'm playing some of them faster than others, or if I'm playing the wrong string, then that might mark me down. For interpretation, am I playing it fluently, or am I having to hesitate and stop? If I'm playing it perfectly all the way through, then I'd get 3 for that. If I'm having to stop quite a lot to kind of figure out where I'm going, probably not so much. And then the last one, technique. Am I holding my bow properly? Am I holding my violin or viola properly? Is my posture okay? If it is, then I'd get 3. If there are some challenges there, then that might mark me down. Okay, so I'll perform to you, so you can be sat in rest position. I'm going to play it along to the backing track, and I just want you to mark me. Here we go. I'm just going to give you 10 seconds to have a look at that grid and figure out what mark you would give me and why. Okay, let's look at this together then. So first things first, accuracy. Was I playing the correct notes? Mostly I was. Mostly the notes were there. There were 1 or 2 occasions where my bow went on the wrong string, which would therefore affect the note that I was playing, but I would say most of the time it was accurate. That's quite simple to mark. Because it was mostly accurate, that would give me a 2 out of 3 for accuracy. In terms of interpretation and fluency, again, I would say it was mainly fluent. I think there was 1 occasion where I sort of stopped one note and started another one slightly later. But on the whole, it was, I was playing in time to the backing track. So I would give myself maybe a 2. Maybe if I was feeling particularly generous and had my extra cup of tea, I might even go as far as a 3 if a student had just 1 occasion where they very, very slightly slipped in terms of their fluency. And then the last one, the technique. That's really where I was struggling, to be honest. I hadn't done my exercises, I hadn't done my warm-ups for my practice, and that meant that the sound was affected because of the technique. My bow hold that you probably couldn't see wasn't very good. I was tensing, my fingers were straight instead of rounded and relaxed, and that meant that I was putting a lot of pressure on the strings, and also I was playing at an angle instead of straight. And that meant that it was causing that scratchy sound. And that was all because of my bow hold. I was also holding my instrument down here. My chin wasn't anywhere near the chin rest. So all of those things combined really affected the sound, which is why we have to be so careful with our technique. So in that case, I would actually give myself a 0 for technique. That feels really harsh. I'm being harsh to myself. Maybe I'd give myself a 1 because, my bow was going in the correct direction, but that is the area that I would have really fallen down on. So adding that up, I would have come out with maybe a 5 out of 9. But if I'd have just fixed my bow hold, that could have really boosted it up to a 7 or an 8 even. But hopefully that gives you an idea of, some of you potentially would have listened to it, thought that sounds horrible, I'm going to give it a 0 out of 9, but actually there are still some things that I managed quite well. It's just that one area that I need to work on. I'm going to do exactly the same piece again. Instead of doing all of it, just because of time, I'm just going to do from the beginning until the end, but without the repeat. I'm going to stop it before the repeat. And I'd like you to mark it again and think about things that I've done differently. That time I'd made some changes, so just have a think about what marks you would give me for that one. All right, so looking at this, accuracy-wise, I played all the right notes. I know I didn't do the repeat, but I'd said before that wasn't going to happen, so I feel like I can be forgiven for that. So in terms of accuracy, that time I would have given that student 3 out of 3 for accuracy. In terms of fluency, again, I didn't stop. I was in time with the backing track. I was playing the notes in time to the beat. Each note lasted for 4 beats, so it was nice and fluent. And then in terms of technique, well, the biggest giveaway was that the sound was much better. And that tells you that my bow hold was much better. Also, if you were looking, you would have noticed that it was rounded and relaxed. My bow stayed in the middle of the bridge and the fingerboard, and it stayed in a straight line. And that meant that the sound was a lot nicer. So if a student played like that for me in their progress review, I would definitely be awarding them 9 out of 9 without hesitation, because they're clearly really practiced their bow hold and they've really thought about the type of sound that they are making. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is the sound. So in terms of sailing home, if that's been the piece that you've chosen, then those are the things that you need to be looking out for your progress review. Now, On Top of Old Smokey is a completely different piece in terms of sound. Instead of nice, long, smooth notes, we're playing quite short, spiky notes. Instead of just going back and forth with the bow, we're having to do that retake that we worked on last lesson. And instead of it being quite a slow, calm, gentle piece, it's much more energetic and a bit more frantic. So it's a different type of sound, but it still needs to be a nice, pleasant sound to listen to. We still want to enjoy the performance. So again, I'm going to give you 2 performances, and I want you to think about what marks you would give each one and why. Still marking using the same criteria. Here we go. Okay, and I'll pause it there. So have a think about it. 10 seconds. What marks would you give it and why? So if we look at accuracy, I played the correct notes. Credit where credit is due. I played the correct strings. However, when it comes to the rhythm, the thing that I kind of forgot about were the rests. I wasn't very good at thinking about making sure I left enough space in those rests. And I'll tell you why that was. It's because I forgot about my retakes. Didn't do them. There was no retake in that rest, which meant I kind of rushed through them a little bit. So I would mark myself down for accuracy. I wouldn't mark myself all the way down. I'd probably give myself a 2, because the notes were correct. I just forgot the rests. In terms of fluency, it was fluent. It was fluent. But again, it was because of the rests being rushed through, that kind of meant that the whole thing was slightly out of time with the backing track. So again, I'd mark myself down for a 2 there. And then in terms of technique, it wasn't bad. It wasn't as bad as it was for Sailing Home. However, I was still clearly using too much pressure on the string with my bow. I was pressing down too hard, which caused a little bit of scrunchiness. And I'd also forgotten about the retake, so I was missing a bit of the technique involved in this piece. So probably, again, maybe a 2 for that. So adding that up, I was giving myself 6 out of 9 there, which is kind of a middle of the road thing. The most crucial thing that I forgot was the retake. If I'd have involved the retake, I probably wouldn't have rushed through the rest because I'd have been busy doing a retake. I would have been thinking about how to land the bow on the string, which would have meant that the sound was a bit more careful. So easy to fix, very, very easy to fix. Have a listen to me performing it again after I fixed it and see if you can really observe the things that I'm doing to change it and improve my mark. Here we go. Much better that time. I remembered my retake. I was really carefully preparing the landing of my bow so that it didn't crash land and affect the sound too much. I remembered to play the notes short and spiky, staccato, and I didn't rush through it because of the fact that I had the retakes there. So that time I would be much more generous in terms of my marking. So I would give myself 3s across the board. 3s for accuracy because I was playing the correct notes. I remembered the rests that time. 3 for fluency, for interpretation, because I didn't have to hesitate at any point. And a 3 for technique because my bow hold was correct and accurate, and I remembered that retake, which really helped the sound there. So for that example, I would come out with 9 out of 9, which I would be very, very happy with and give myself a pat on the back. So you should have thought for your practice about which of those 2 pieces you're approaching for your progress review. If you are doing Sailing Home, then you need to be thinking about nice, long, calm bows going from the heel to the tip and then to the tip, from the tip to the heel. If you're doing On Top of Old Smokey, you still need to have a great sound, but it's just a very different energy. It's much more short notes. The retake needs to be executed really carefully, and you need to be reading ahead in the music because it's so much faster. So whichever one you're doing, make sure you practice it. If needs be, go back to the lesson where we covered it and have a look at it together. And then once you've done your progress review, for your homework over half term, what I'd like you to do is to just consolidate everything that we have been looking at. So revising that bow hold and the instrument hold, going between a tense, crunchy sound and that light, whispery sound, and then trying to find the sound in between that is the real sweet spot. Practice, I haven't put this on here, but practicing a rainbow exercise is still a really, really good thing to be doing all the time. And then I'd like you to practice the retakes. So just simply going from all of your strings, playing 3 notes and then retaking. Retake onto the next string, retake onto the next string, onto the next string, then back down, back down, back down. And just doing that in front of a mirror or looking at yourself or getting someone else to observe, making sure that you're doing that sort of retake, that little circle with your wrist to get the bow back to the bottom. And then I said, for number 4, practice switching between arco and pizzicato. Arco is using our bow, pizzicato is plucking. Now, we've only practiced that separately with separate pieces. So when you're practicing this, what I'd like you to do is to be stood in front of a table or your bed or a desk or a counter or something in front of you that you can put your bow very carefully on. And what I would like you to do is to practice playing 4 notes arco, then 4 beats putting your bow down, and then 4 notes pizzicato. So I'll demonstrate. So I'll start on the D string, and I'll start on the G string actually, and I'll go through some different notes. So starting the G string, I'd go like this. Bow down, 3, 4. Bow up, 2, 3, 4. Bow down, 2, 3, 4. Bow up and then back down, so that you can just get used to switching carefully without feeling rushed and feeling frantic, so that we can still focus on producing a really nice sound. So plenty to be getting on with over half term, plenty to think about. As I've said before, if you are able to practice for 10-15 minutes 3-4 times a week, then you will be making the perfect amount of progress, and the more work we put into this, the more we get out of it in terms of enjoyment. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you after half term.